Good morning. I'm News Center Maine's Don Kerrigan here with this week's edition of Political Brew, joined by Republican analyst Phil Harriman, Democratic analyst Betsy Sweet. Thank you both for being with us. As if there weren't enough happening in the world and in politics already, this has been quite a week. In Maine, we had the Democratic majority of the legislature pass most of the new state budget as a majority, no Republican votes, coming to this conclusion at the end of last week and then pushing it through before the end of March. Phil, I'm going to ask you first. Republicans are all against this and complaining about it. Democrats apparently all for it. What's your take?
Well, as someone who sat through a similar experience when I was in the Senate, Republicans feel they got elected to represent their constituents, and they've been denied the opportunity to do so. And then it turns into the rhetoric that Betsy knows all too well from her time there. The Democrats say we had to do this because we can't afford a state shutdown, and the Republicans say there wouldn't be a state shutdown if you included us, and therefore everybody watching the Political Brew this morning goes, I've heard enough.
Yeah, right, I've had it, yeah.
I'm gonna go over to the coffee pot. Betsy, you were there for some of this.
I was there for all of it, and I would say that, you know, it is a really hard situation because a week ago Friday we were sitting and everything was unanimous. Republicans, Democrats, unanimous. So I left Friday afternoon thinking, oh, this is going to be awesome. There's going to be unanimous agreement to pass a continuing service budget. So it's not most of what was in the governor's proposal.
It is most.
No. All the new stuff. None of the new stuff is in.
No, but it's
keeping
like
the doors open.
85% of the total budget.
Yeah, but it's the services to keep money going to schools, money going to the towns, keeping everything open. So and I thought that was going to be unanimous because were running out of time. And then at the 11th hour, there were two things that the Republicans insisted on, which was a tax cut, which costs money, doesn't save money, it costs money, an additional spending thing for a tax cut, and then to do this whole welfare reform, looking at this whole welfare reform in 1 month, like to look at the whole system. So I'm not sure that was a serious proposal, but it was the grounds on which they ended up leaving. And I think this goes back to early this session. Remember when they were doing the $450 checks? They had to do 2/3. They had a unanimous vote out of appropriations. And so everyone thought it was just going to sail through. And when it got to the Senate Republicans denied the 2/3. And they had to do all kinds of machinations and stuff to make that happen. So if you're a leader, if you're a Democratic leader, or you're Troy Jackson, or you're Rachel Talbot Ross, and you see them playing with that thing that everyone agreed on, to think that maybe they might say, oh, we're going to threaten a shutdown, then that doesn't seem outrageous. And so this way, I lived, and well, so did Phil, we lived through a shutdown. It is ugly. It is awful. It causes harm to everyone watching this show. And people in the state of Maine. So this way, that won't happen. Schools can know the money they're getting. They can do their budgets. Towns can do their budgets. And now any new initiatives now the legislature and the governor, including the Republican legislators, have much more opportunity now to work together to figure out how they want to spend whatever money isn't just in the baseline.
Phil, I'm thinking you see this a little differently.
I do. First, we should look at the baseline budget. That's what the legislature is elected to do. They're not looking at the baseline budget, as you point out. 85% of the spending is now going to be intact.
But that's been always true. I've been there 42 years, and no one has ever looked at the baseline budget, no matter who's in control.
It's time that we do that.
I'm with you about that.
And so now we're talking about the 15% of new stuff, and they don't need Republicans. They can pass that on majority budgets, let it go into effect 90 days after the legislature adjourns, which brings me back to what I said before. People tuning in are going to go have another cup of coffee.
But let me just say, when this was done 2 years ago, the second round, right, of the new stuff, as you call it, the investments, was unanimous, Republicans and Democrats.
But that was because there was a major compromise by the governor and enough Democrats to do what Republicans wanted.
Right, but there's no saying that that's not going to happen this time. I mean, hasn't
the Senate president signaled that he will not support tax cuts?
No, I mean, not in this round. So I think this makes a much better sense. I do agree with you that there should be a sunrise provision, and we ought to look at this budget but that's not about this. And so anyway, I think we're in a better place. I think we're in a more secure place, and now I think the legislature has more influence over the governor's initiatives.
So final question on this topic. Is this a poison pill kind of thing? Is this going to affect all the other stuff that they do over the next 3 months?
I hope not. I mean, it could be, and I do think for the first time No, I met her for the first time. I think it depends on the individual. I don't think it's going to be a party-wide thing. I was on the phone with Senator Rick Bennett this morning, and he and I, and we're working on some stuff together. And he said, no, I don't think that's going to be the case.
Okay, Phil?
It could be. There are going to be instances where they need a 2/3 vote, whether it's getting a judge confirmed or someone appointed to the university trustees or some other constitutionally required 2/3 vote. And I wouldn't be surprised if Republicans say, you know what, you couldn't work with us on the budget, the most important document that goes through the legislature. We're not going to work with you on this.
Which is kind of
more to be seen.
Sandbox, right?
Well,
on both sides.
on both sides.
Sandbox,
Yeah,
right?
more to be seen. All right, other issues. A proposal in the legislature that would extend MaineCare, Medicaid coverage to non-citizens. Betsy, I expect you support this.
Yes, and I was there at the hearing, and this is a restoration. So this happened. They were covered before, and then under LePage they stopped covering them. And the thing that's so important,
A lot more people now than
absolutely,
there were then.
and the thing that's really important to understand is, in addition to the humanity and the justice of it, which we can argue about, it just from a tax position, from a economic position. These folks are covered if they get really sick and end up in the hospital, the emergency room. Mm-hmm. So the question is, do we give them, or do we allow that they get health care and preventive care, which prevents those way more expensive interventions in the hospital later, or do we say, no, sorry?
Okay, Phil.
Well, I don't disagree with anything that Betsy has said, but it does beg the larger question, which is we're having this influx of people who are not citizens, who are getting onto our support systems. There was no hearings, there were no votes to have this sort of influx of pressure that's going on, not only the state budget, but property taxes. We need a strategic plan around how we're going to welcome people who come from other places into our communities.
I agree with that.
Don't know when that's going to happen, however, right?
It should have happened long ago. Unfortunately, you have people elected to political office who send out the public message, come here, we'll take care of you. Well, gee, the voters didn't get a chance to weigh in on how much are we going to do.
Attorney General Aaron Frey of the state of Maine this week announced that he is filing suit against two very large chemical companies over the PFAS contamination issue. The Attorney General either files or gets involved in lawsuits against manufacturers all the time. Betsy, is this a smart move?
Yeah, I mean, PFAS is in everything, and it causes cancer. Like we know that there's a direct link, and so we see even organic farmers who use no pesticides, their soil is being, and everyone thought they were doing the right thing, right? And the chemical companies, then this lawsuit is if they knew and they didn't say anything, then they should be held liable because people thought that they were doing the right thing, using compost and using sludge, and so I think it's absolutely a good move.
Yeah. Phil, does this?
I think Betsy's got it exactly right, and the state condoned this behavior, so the Attorney General is on him.
I did stories on it in the 1980s at the DEP saying what a great solution.
What a great solution.
Right,
absolutely.
So if it wasn't, the Attorney General's going to have to demonstrate that not only that they knew that it was harming our environment, but that they did it with intent.
A story that nobody's covering, right? Former President Trump being indicted by a grand jury in New York City. He predicted it, was it last week or the week before? It did happen. Maybe it seemed to take a lot of people by surprise that it happened when it did. Phil, I'll start with you. What does this mean for Trump, but more importantly, what does this mean for the country?
I think this is going to be a very difficult time for our country. But both sides of the issue feel passionate about this. My understanding is that the indictment, which we don't know what's in the indictment.
Yeah,
that,
as of right now, Friday, we don't know.
Right, so let's wait for that before we jump to the next decision. But he's going to be arrested next week, and that is going to be the second time in American history that a president has been arrested, not indicted, but arrested. Ulysses Grant was arrested for speeding in his horse and buggy. And the second time, he got a warning the first time. He was arrested the second time by a black man who was fought in the Civil War and became a police officer. So
you go.
That's a great piece of history. So Betsy?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is, I would hope that people would say, okay, enough is enough. This man has to faces legal consequences, whatever they are. And the Republican Party needs to move on and get over their fascination and their addiction to Trump. And I think, I think it's an embarrassment to the office of the president. I think it should be an embarrassment to Trump, although he seems to be reveling in it. And I think it's going to be, to Phil's point, it's going to be a call to, unfortunately, I think it's a call to more division.
Both sides man the barricades.
Exactly.
Well, I think adding on to that, I think there's a feeling in America, and Trump exemplifies that for people who feel like they're the little guy. No one's speaking up for them. It's them against us, and I'm the us. And Trump represents this faction in America that says someone's finally standing up and speaking up.
But he's the little guy? I mean, that's the thing I don't understand. I mean, I understand the little guy feeling. I don't understand that Trump is the head of that. Plus, I think it's amazingly, deliciously ironic that American democracy could be saved by a porn star.
So politically,
I think I have another cup.
yeah, there you go. There you go.
Well,
Good chance.
right?
Politically, it appears that Donald Trump wanted this result.
Of course.
That he wanted this indictment because it
Keeps him in the news.
Keeps him in the news.
Keeps him in the news.
I'm sure it's going to bring in a lot of money to his campaign.
Well, but the point is, he is likely to win the Republican nomination. I don't think he can win the general election, which is what probably the Democrats want him to be nominated, because he's not going to appeal to the disaffected Democrat or the independent.
Right. Yeah.
So this is all going to unfold, and we may have the unbelievable sight of a former president having to face a judge. So that'll all unfold in the coming week. Big issue affecting Maine in a way. Bowdoin College graduate, a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, arrested, taken prisoner in Russia, where they accuse him of spying. Phil, I'll have you start with this. What do we think about this? Obviously, this seems outrageous. The Wall Street Journal says it's ridiculous to think that he was spying. He was doing his job as a reporter. Is this one more little piece of retaliation for something by the Russians against the U.S.?
Boy, it sure appears that way. The Russians were quoted as saying they caught him red-handed, end quote. If they did, our diplomats in the State Department ought to be exchanging that information and verifying it, and if it's not true, they should release him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well, and I think it's an example of, if we look at it carefully, of how Putin is losing. I think in Ukraine, I think he's losing around the country. He's losing in his own, what used to be the Soviet Union. In country after country, people are repudiating him now, with the possible exception of China. But I think, so this is like, you get desperate, right? And so what do? You have to do little things that then can become big things. And he has seemingly no leverage in the United States now. And so, doing this kind of thing is the thing that gets him leverage.
yeah. And speaking of Putin, he announced that he's moving tactical nuclear weapons into Belarus, next door to Ukraine. So that's upping the ante there.
Absolutely. It should scare us all.
Yeah.
No question.
Yeah. Speaking of scary, another school shooting this week in Nashville. A 28-year-old transgender man blasting away into the school with assault rifles and a pistol, killing 3 children, 3 adults. Betsy, I'll let you start with this. It just seems it's one more of these. We seem helpless to do anything about it.
It is one more, and as a mom of 3 kids, there are no other people's children. Not only did it affect those beautiful babies and those people in that school, but every child and every parent in America is terrified. I talked to a woman this morning, said, I'm just terrified to put my kid on the bus. I never know if I'm going to see that child. And when our response to our collective governmental policy response to that is, oh, how do we make sure we can keep our guns, as opposed to how do we make sure this never, ever happens again? We don't have a policy crisis, we have a morality crisis. And this, at some point, we have got to say, what is the turning point? 3 little 6-year-olds being massacred in a Christian school, all the people who, we've had 126 mass shootings since the beginning of the year. I don't know what the tipping point is that it's enough, but if this, my thoughts and prayers go out, but thoughts and prayers are worthless if we don't do policy.
Phil.
Yeah, I think Betsy's got that right, and some of the policies that we need to revisit are, why are they going to schools? Because we declare them gun-free zones. They're easy targets. We need to have an opportunity to have the conversation. How do we have people who are properly trained protect our kids from someone who's in that deranged state of mind? Also, we need to pay tribute to the police officers who acted heroically. They put their lives on the line, literally, to save lives. And to the school administrators who hired someone to do some active shooter training that they deployed that saved many of these students. The only people who were affected were roaming in hallways. They didn't get into classrooms.
The tragedy, of course, is that they have to do that.
Those are policy decisions that will minimize what we're unfortunately still having to talk about.
But where are we? Like, you know, if I'm a school teacher on the playground, if Phil throws a rock at Don, my answer is not to give Don a rock too. Where are we? It is the guns. We know. You can see the graph. When we got rid of the assault weapons ban in 1994, the number of mass shootings went to this, to this. That's just factual. A background check, 72-hour waiting period. We know factually in this country, in states, in other countries, it works. What we don't know is why, in God's name, we cannot get state government or the federal government to do anything that we know works.
And they apparently do not have a red flag law in Tennessee. Maine has one, there are various versions of them, that might have allowed, apparently the family was concerned about this woman's mental state and had wanted to get some of her guns away from her. And so there was some level of concern someplace. And yet it didn't prevent this.
Right, because there are thousands of people who have a bone to pick or have a mental illness or just are angry.
But that's how we've got to get after that too somehow, right?
What compels someone to make that decision to go to this easy, heartbreaking target? Why are they behaving that way? Right. Whether they've got a rock or a knife or a gun, why are they behaving that way?
No, that is true. We agree on that. But whether they have a knife or a rock or a gun makes a difference. If they have a rock, they can do some damage. If they have a knife, they can do some damage. If they have an AK-47 where they can do this across a classroom, that makes a difference. So that is easy, should be easy, low-hanging fruit to stop that.
All right. I think we're going to have to talk about this some more. All right. Winners and losers of the week. Betsy, you said you had one. Start
with my loser is every politician in Maine and America who has not agreed to do an assault weapons ban, a background check, a 72-hour waiting period, smart things that gun owners support, everyone supports, so we can save our children. Okay. My winner of the week is Caitlin Clark from the Iowa basketball team, who did an historic 41-point triple-double in the game last week, and is an extraordinary athlete, an extraordinary human, and is just so much fun to watch. So that's great.
All right, Phil.
My loser of the week is Vladimir Putin for jailing a journalist who has connections to Maine. My winner of the week is Kate Vickery, who is the CEO of Make-A-Wish Maine. She just helped celebrate and thank volunteers and contributors for 30 years of granting wishes.
Wow, great work that gets done there.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you both very much. Thank you for being with us this week. News Center Maine continues right after this.